Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lightcast webinar today. Thank you all for joining. My name is John Wanamaker. I'm Vice President of Marketing here at Lightcast. I'm thrilled today to have the opportunity to bring you a really compelling story straight out of Greensboro, North Carolina, as we meet and discuss Greensboro's out-of-the-box approach to talent attraction. With us today is Cecelia Thompson from Action Greensboro, as well as from Lightcast, Gareth Blaney. Thank you all for joining. We're excited to dig in on this topic and give you some insight and some ideas around how to attract talent to your region. Before we dig in, I want to quickly just go through a couple of different housekeeping and logistical items. First, I just want to say that if you have a comment or want to connect with your peers who are also on the webinar today, please use the chat feature. If you have a question for the Q&A and that you want to ask for our presenters at the end, please submit a question via the Q&A feature. We will be recording today's session, and we will be sending all of you a copy of the slides and of the recording when we follow up with an email to you after the webinar today. I just want to say a little bit about how we came to work together with Cecelia and how we came upon this webinar. Some time ago, Cecelia and I met, and I was so inspired by the exciting story and the results that she has realized with her team in the way that she's re-attracting talent back to the Greensboro area. I was, truth be told, Cecelia, and my apologies, but was multitasking while on the call with her and was checking out Greensboro real estate and looking at ways to make it possible for me and my family to move there. After you hear her story today, I think you're going to have some of the same feeling. But just really happy for this conversation to be taking place today and to have all of you with us. And with that, we're going to kick off with our session today. Thanks again for joining. Gareth?
Thank you, John. Hi, Cecelia. Good morning, afternoon, everyone, depending on what time zone you're located in. My name is Gareth Blaney. I am an account executive at Lightcast. I've been working at Lightcast for just a little over 3 years now. And I have the pleasure of working with organizations involved in economic development within the Southeast region of the US, which is great because that's an area that is near and dear to my heart as I live in Charleston, South Carolina. That Southeast region does include Missouri and Oklahoma. So I know some folks in that state or those states consider themselves more Midwestern, but in my view, you are Southeastern. I do aim to understand the challenges and opportunities that all of my customers face and suggest how Lightcast can help and demonstrate the effects of using our data and solutions, which led me to getting to know Cecelia. And actually, prepping for this, I learned that Cecelia completely forgot about the first time that she met me. But nonetheless, I distinctly remember because Cecelia is not someone that you forget. I think it was my first month on the job, and it was around the holidays time, and I guess Lightcast couldn't find anyone else to present. So they asked the newbie, and Cecelia is really involved in her community. And at the time, I think she was presenting in front of a group of high school students or younger professionals, wanting to demonstrate career pathways and job opportunities in the Greensboro area and using some of the data that Lightcast has to compare it to other regions. So I was happy to do that. Great first impression. And that relationship has really grown over the years. Primarily, I've gotten to know her by attending the Young, Smart, and Local conference that Lightcast now has heavily become involved in as a key sponsor over the years. For those of you that are not familiar, Young, Smart, and Local is a national network of communities working to build a diverse workforce through the engagement and retention of young professionals. I would imagine if you're attending this webinar, you're really involved with talent attraction, and I could not encourage you more to either speak with Cecelia or investigate how to attend that conference, Young, Smart and Local is certainly something that is really valuable. So that's a little bit about me. But obviously, we want to talk a little bit about Lightcast. I'm going to be brief here because I know everyone wants to hear the star of the show, Cecelia. At Lightcast, we have over 20 years of experience in guiding employers, educators, and government organizations in using our labor market data and solutions to have a data driven approach to a range of efforts. But for today's presentation, specifically developing, retaining, and attracting talent. So, what do I mean by providing our customers with an unparalleled view of the labour market? There's a lot to look at here on this slide. Job postings, career profiles. We'll get into those in a little bit more detail later as it relates to the talent migration dashboard. But from looking to emerging skills, local supply and demand for talent, to companies experiencing growth and wanting to start a new project or expand to a new market, to understanding your talent pipeline from local colleges and universities, we deliver our data to customers in a number of different ways. Today, we'll be speaking specifically about one of those solutions, which is the talent migration dashboard. But we have other ways of giving our customers access to our data, and that includes software that is primarily used for internal research to more public-facing tools like dashboards and even your own website where you're able to display pertinent data regarding your economy and your labor market. Our clients, I like to touch upon how do they actually use some of our data. It's not just for talent attraction and development, while that's certainly very pertinent, but also for business attraction, retention, understanding workforce availability, benchmarking against other markets, and more general economic development efforts. So a lot of really rich, great data that can be looked at a macro level all the way down to a more micro regional level, be it a city or a state or an MSA. So that's a little bit about Lightcast and the data that we offer. Now is a good point to introduce the star of the show and let Cecelia talk about Action Greensboro.
Awesome. Thank you, Gareth. And hi, everybody. I'm Cecelia Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Action Greensboro. I love seeing in the chat where you guys are from, so keep that going. It's fun to see where you're coming from and what time zone you're in. But a little bit about Action Greensboro. So if you are not familiar with the state of North Carolina, we are in the middle of the state. Greensboro is a population of around 300,000. Our county is about 500,000, and our region is about 1 million. And so we are in the triad. A lot of people know what the triangle is, which is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, but we're in the triad in the middle of the state, which we often tell people it's a great place to live, and it's also a great place because it's 2 hours to the beach and 3 hours to the mountains, and so really nicely located in the state of North Carolina. So Action Greensboro is a pretty unique organization. We are a consortium of 8 local charitable foundations. Each of those foundations have their own mission, but each of them are committed to Greensboro as an organization, and they come together through Action Greensboro to do collective impact work around economic development. We are a part of the Greensboro Chamber, and so we fit within the greater economic development strategy of the city, but we think we're sort of an extra special sauce to the mix as we continue to think about how do we innovate to strengthen the quality of life and the economy here. And so we often sort of shift in terms of the needs and opportunities of our community, and for the last 5 or 7 years, we've been focused solely on talent, which includes really a 3-stage or a 3-component strategic plan. The first is we're really focused on early childhood and K-12 efforts. And so as we think about talent from an upstream perspective, how do we make sure that children are coming to kindergarten ready to learn? They're at 3rd grade reading level and they're graduating, and they have the accommodations and the support that they need through their educational system to thrive. The second part of our plan of work is called attracting and retaining skilled talent. That includes a program called Campus Greensboro that works with our 7 colleges and universities here in Greensboro to retain top talent from those institutions and make sure that they're ready for the workforce, they know what Greensboro is, and they want to live here post-graduation. From that, we have our Synergy program, which is a young professionals organization. It's a dues-free organization that provides professional development, leadership training, social activities for young people. We call it that stickiness factor. How can you move to a city or become a young professional into a city and you're connected in a way that feels sticky, that you don't want to leave? And then our boomerang campaign is why we're here today, and I'll share a little bit more. But when we think about that sticky factor, maybe we lost them and we've got to bring them back. And so we'll be talking about that strategy. I'll say the last piece of our plan is really what we call the built-in natural environment. And so how do we make sure that Greensboro is a community of choice for talent? And that includes a lot of downtown development. We're in the process of building a downtown greenway, which is a 4-mile loop around the center city. So a pretty robust strategy, but really focused on how do we make sure that we are a destination for talent and that we are growing the talent that we need for the workforce. So back to the boomerang campaign, we in 2019, at the end of 2019, our foundation leaders came to us and said, you're doing a really good job of retaining talent and developing talent. But how can we as a community that is gaining a lot of new employers, that is growing a fair amount, how can we be more aggressive in attraction of talent to our community? And so we're lucky enough to have an organization here called the Center for Creative Leadership, which is one of the top leadership training organizations in the world. They're headquartered in Greensboro. And we said, let's bring 25 leaders out to CCL and talk about what would it look like if Action Greensboro looked to attract 25 new families to Greensboro annually. And we spent a half a day throwing every idea at the wall. A lot of those were too expensive for our budget, around building a soccer complex or, whatever you might dream of on your wish list. And we talked about a lot of the challenges that we faced in Greensboro. And one of those was we have grown our community tremendously, and people who live here love it. But people who don't live here don't really know who we are. I joke a lot about how I can be on an airplane and the person next to me says, where are you from? And I say, Greensboro, North Carolina. And they say, we love that river that goes through your city. And I say, that's Greenville, South Carolina. And so how do we grapple with this idea of our own identity and our own brand, knowing that we've grown our community, and there's a lot of traditional ways that you can brand a community, and we're working on those as well. But thinking about how could we find a population that was familiar with Greensboro and would be really excited about coming back to Greensboro. And that's how our boomerang campaign was conceived, the concept of it. So before I go into sort of the technical components of the campaign, I'm going to hand it over to Gareth, who's going to talk a little about those challenges, particularly as we all face aging populations in our community and really shifting demographics within our current workforce.
Thanks, Cecelia. So for everyone attending on the webinar today, just a little mention about the rising storm, something that has come about over several years, where Lightcast and my colleague, specifically Ron Hetrick, has been developing a series of reports around the demographic drought. And the Rising Storm report that you see on your screen right here, I believe there's a QAR code where you'll be able to download it, or you could actually visit our site. And keep me right here, John. I do believe also that if you're a audio person and you're out working out or you're out walking, you would be able to download it in audio format on Spotify. So if you're one of those people that doesn't like to read as much and you like to kind of listen to books on tape, it would be an interesting report to listen to. And it addresses why we're facing a labor shortage, but not only the question of why, but more importantly, what are we going to do about it to prepare for this challenge at a national or a more local level? And as Cecelia mentioned, we all know as baby boomers are retiring at a higher rate than ever before and leaving the workforce, and we're seeing a contraction in the younger workforce, there are going to be continued labor shortages. And I'm sure I'm looking at the audience and seeing people from all over the country here. I'm sure that that's something that every region is experiencing. And it's not just going to be regional. Each industry in the US is going to feel those effects differently. And for some, the answer might be an increased use of automation, or for others, it might be that we really need to tighten up and focus more on upskilling and retaining your existing local workforce. And it might also be a topic that we're talking about today to fill in those gaps. It might be that we have to really think about where we're attracting talent from and how to market to different regions. So, Lightcast, if it's not already clear, we really want to help you prepare a future ready workforce. That's exactly what the Rising Storm is about, and making your community an area to thrive. And I do believe on the next slide here, John, keep me right, we've got a little bit of a poll that's happening that you can actually contribute in here. And John, I'll maybe let you speak to this.
Yeah, you bet. We are just curious to see if you all are experiencing similar challenges as Greensboro and Cecelia have in the past about aging population, and where and how you are addressing some of those challenges. So curious to know if you all are experiencing some challenges with your aging population. There should be a way to respond here, which I'm not seeing the radio buttons. All right, well, maybe we won't be doing polling today.
Maybe we'll just assume that everyone is facing
Yes.
this challenge.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, here are the answers. Okay. So it looks like, yes, definitely a challenge for 71% of you. And some of the lucky ones, no, not yet, about 28%. So thanks for responding. Glad to know that those of you who aren't experiencing that are watching closely.
Awesome. Well, for the 28% of you, now is the time to start thinking about the rising storm. And so thinking about what that will look like for each of your communities and the various industries that sit within it. So back to the Boomerang campaign. So when we left that meeting at the Center for Creative Leadership, we left with this sort of idea in mind. There was this through line of conversation of people who said, I know somebody who lived in Greensboro, they left Greensboro, they gained experience and perspective, and they came back to our community, and they were more likely to care and to do more and to lean into the community. They were members of their PTA, or they may have joined a committee or a nonprofit board. They were involved in their neighborhoods and their schools. And so we thought, how special would it be for us? What a wonderful compliment, right? As a return customer, for somebody to choose after leaving Greensboro to come back. And so we set out with a goal to recruit 25 new families back to Greensboro annually. And soon after, I will say, the pandemic hit. And we paused. We did a focus group actually right before the pandemic and asked people questions when we were sort of conceptualizing this campaign of like, if you were going to be contacted by somebody from Greensboro to move back, would you like to talk to somebody who's a peer in your industry or in your life? Or would you like to talk to your high school friend? And they all said, we don't want to talk to our high school friends. And so we said, okay, there's a lesson learned. What are sort of the key messages and when we do this? And so literally the next day, the world shut down for the pandemic, and we waited. We all, as you know, kind of reevaluated where we were in our individual strategies at work. And about 3 months into the pandemic, we started following migration trends, which is another data point that Lightcast offers. And when we looked at those data points, the migration trends, we saw that there was a high influence of people that were leaving major metro areas and they were moving to mid-sized communities like Greensboro. And we thought, we need to ride this wave. And so we quickly developed a campaign called Boomerang Greensboro and launched that, knowing that people were moving home to be with parents temporarily. They were coming in, and it was an opportunity to sell to stay, but it was also an opportunity to leverage who in the pandemic wanted somebody who they loved closer to home. A lot of us did. And so we took advantage of that. So here is our Boomerang Greensboro strategy. Our tagline is, you grew up, so did Greensboro. What we do essentially, and when we launched the campaign, we talked on Zoom to about every Rotary Club and Kiwanis Club and Civic Club that we could online and said, we have this crazy idea of recruiting people back to Greensboro. And then we asked them to send us their names and their home addresses. And because Greensboro is such a lovely place to live, they all agreed. And so we put together a list of 100 people from all of those Zoom meetings. and started mailing them things. And I think oftentimes, maybe outside of the election season, it's really fun to get something in the mail, especially when you're like, who put me on this list, right? And so we developed what we call our boomerang box, which you can see on the screen, but I also have one right behind me. And the boomerang box is something that you receive right when you're on our list. When you open it up, it has the full skyline in it. And it says, like, you've been invited. So it feels a really happy treasure to receive in the mail. And included in the box is information about Greensboro. What we know is that we don't need to introduce Greensboro to people, we need to reintroduce them. And so, what is better within the last 10 years that they may not know about? New cultural amenities, new schools that are being built, accolades about our schools and our neighborhoods, home prices, cost of living comparisons. And so, all of that's included in the box, as well as some really delicious popcorn that's made here in Greensboro, and an invitation to join us in having a conversation about how can we help you relocate back to Greensboro. If they don't respond immediately to this box, they do receive quarterly postcards. And so a postcard reflects different themes from our campaign, really sort of touching on heartstrings. And each of those also feature a boomerang in real life. I think oftentimes you can see a model on the screen and you say, I don't look like her, that's not my pant size. But when you can see somebody that you know is living and thriving in Greensboro, it's often more a compelling story. And so it's stories about how you can be closer to family, how you can have built-in childcare from your parents, how you can go out on a really inexpensive date. And so those highlight really wonderful things about our city. We do a lot of advertising, both digitally, online, on YouTube, to really tell the stories of boomerangs. And we show them even in like the airport. When people are coming in, they can learn about Greensboro. And then a special sauce to this is that we provide what we call a concierge service. And that is essentially a phone call with somebody on our team. It's typically about 30 minutes. And we ask people, what are the barriers for you to return to Greensboro? In many ways, it's oftentimes a professional connection or professional opportunity. And so we're very clear with everyone. We're not recruiters. So we're not going to get in the middle of a salary negotiation or how many days of work you want to have in the office or at home. But we will open doors in a way that you may not get in another community, and those connections will happen faster. And so essentially we connect people to local employers in the community. And the city has sort of a perk of this campaign has been that people are really excited and proud. And there's a lot of community pride around boomerangs coming back. And so they're eager and excited to make those connections for people. And so connecting them to the business community, making those leads for them really is sort of a secret sauce for us in making sure that those professional connections happen. So a little bit more about our advertisements. You'll see this is the campaign about Ingrid and her husband who moved back from Seattle. They're closer now to grandmother who is able to take care of their children. When childcare is such a crisis in the country, this is certainly a perk for living closer to family. Again, family time all the time. This ad is about the Mitchell family. Both boys have moved back with their families, grown their families, and starting businesses here, and really talking about, coming around the table together at the holidays is really special. But what if you could do that anytime you want? And so this ad is not only a postcard, but it's running in a local magazine here. That's how we get additional prospects from the community. And then it's also on 2 billboards in our airport, knowing that a lot of people are traveling home during the holiday season. So I'm going to hand it back. Oh, this is still me. So sorry. Okay, so what we did in the first phase of this is what we would call a high touch strategy. And that was asking Gareth and John, who do you know that you wish would come back to Greensboro? Those are really valuable connections because they're personal connections to us. But what we wanted to think about was, how do you scale this approach? You're only going to get so many people through friends and family connections or advertisements in local magazines. And so when Gareth and I discussed this migration data that Lightcast recently released last year, I was really excited about it because it's able to look at in-migration and out-migration. And so a lot of people are wondering, where are people coming from to move to Greensboro? And of course, that's super interesting within the data. But really what we wanted to know as boomerangs is, where were people leaving? Because we want them to come back. And so the data was really, really interesting to us, and it continues to be. And so we thought, what if we honed in on a sector that is growing in Greensboro, that is a sexy sector, and that can really attract interesting talent back. And so we focus now on the aviation sector as our first high-tech strategy. And so we looked at aviation. We have a very large aviation industry here, from HAECO to Honda Jets, Localized, Boom Supersonic, large advanced manufacturing sites here with a really growing aviation community. So we wanted to know where folks were leaving to. And this is why data matters, right? You have assumptions of where people are leaving to. You think Seattle, you think Wichita, you think Charleston or Savannah. But what we were really surprised with is that we were losing aviation talent to Indianapolis. And so we all thought, aha, why? And so we did a little research, and Indianapolis does have a growing aviation sector, and they also have a large FedEx air hub. And so using this trend, what we decided to do was to start running commercials in the Indianapolis metro area about our growing aviation sector and highlighting a boomerang that has come back to Greensboro to be in the aviation industry. And so we've been running these on television, and just oftentimes this is about brand recognition before its immediate return. But we've been really excited about the campaign and about the strategy. So I think the next slide is the video. So I'm going to move on to that so you can see the Hulu commercial that's playing in Indianapolis.
I've always been passionate about airplanes. We decided to move back to Greensboro when this opportunity came. I mean, nothing is cooler than going to work every day and seeing an airplane being made, hearing airplanes land. My name is Enoch Bowles, and I'm the talent acquisition leader at Honda Aircraft Company.
Aviation is booming in Greensboro. We are the third largest and most attractive place for aviation. Currently, we have over 15,000 folks employed in the aviation aerospace industry.
Well, in the last 10 years, we've more than doubled the number of folks working here. The beauty of the tenants that we have on the airport is that they all offer a diverse variety of services and manufacturing. We've got Honda, which is making the Honda Jet, and then Boom Supersonic is right now under construction, and they'll be making the world's next supersonic airliner. Then we have MROs, which is maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and those are the kinds of companies that maintain airplanes. Companies like HAECO, Cessna, or Textron.
Aerospace and aviation employees in our area have degrees from the military. They have certifications from the community college, associate's degrees, as well as master's and bachelor's degrees.
As my family grew, my wife and we talked about what was the next step for our family. We wanted our children to go to good school systems, and we wanted to also set them up for success as they get older. Leaving a major city such as New York, there's a little bit of hesitancies. However, Greensboro, in my opinion, has a little bit of everything. The culture here is fantastic. The diversity is great. The food is fantastic. There's a lot to do. And for me, for my career, there's a lot going on here in the aerospace world. Honda Jet right now is in the middle of an exciting time of growth. We are the world headquarters of Honda Aircraft Company. We hire for roles in supply chain, IT, engineering, flight tests, production, you name it. There's exponential growth with what Greensboro is doing, with what the state of North Carolina is doing in aviation. A lot of great companies are establishing themselves here, and their success is our success and vice versa. More talent will be driven towards Greensboro, North Carolina. There'll be more opportunities for existing companies to grow, and there'll be more recognition of Greensboro as being a center for aviation. This is a very exciting time to be here.
So that is the ad. Of course, it's a little bit condensed when you see it on YouTube, but you get a good feel for the energy of the aviation sector here in Greensboro. Gareth?
Yeah, every time I see that video, it's great, but it also makes me wish that I had paid more attention in school and actually got a degree in aviation, and then it could give me an excuse to move to Greensboro. So this is the part where we're going to talk a little bit about the talent migration dashboard. It's not going to be possible to actually give a demo of the product. So we're going to rely a little bit on kind of concept, a couple of screenshots within the product. I'm not going to get too detailed, but I will say if you have an interest in actually seeing the talent migration dashboard and taking a demo, either myself or any of my other colleagues that are account executives at Lightcast that maybe serve in your region would be very happy to do that with you. It is the tool that Cecelia and Action Greensboro have been using. So again, I'm going to keep things kind of high level here. There are some screenshots. I know that you might be, if you're like me right now, staring at the screen and going, what is he showing here? So we developed the talent migration dashboard to provide our customers with more strategic migration insights. And we obviously did that against the backdrop. I talked a little bit earlier, as did Cecelia, about the demographic drought and the rising storm. But there's a projected shortage of 6 million workers in less than a decade that the US is experiencing. So those labor shortages are going to make competition even more fierce. So if you can use this dashboard to stay ahead of the curve and other competing regions, that's great. It does come with an annual subscription. The tool itself and the dashboard is built on Tableau, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with on the call today. The three main primary data sources, and I didn't want to talk too much about other products that Lightcast uses, but many of you on the audience today perhaps subscribe to one of our solutions that offers some Lightcast data that is called the developer platform. Now, within that tool, we do provide some data that comes from the IRS, which shows place of residence and place of work. That data still exists within the dashboard. However, we've supplemented it with what I would say are two other really important data sources that allow us to get more granular than just looking at net migration. So, movement of people or where they live and where they work. So, the second data source that we're using is from the ACS, which helps answer questions such as, okay, you've talked to us about movement of people, but what about occupations or industries that those people might work in? And can you tell us more information about those people's ages, gender, or ethnicity? As an example, are we losing aerospace engineers to Indianapolis? So, getting very granular. Are we losing people of a certain age? Are we gaining people of a certain age or a certain ethnicity? And then the third data set, so we've talked about the IRS data, we've talked about the ACS data. The third data set that we use within the dashboard is our own proprietary Lightcast profile data. So, for those of us in the audience that are not familiar with Lightcast and all of the data that we offer, we have a huge suite of profiles, which is essentially anywhere where a person might publish information about their education, career, skills, information of that nature. Essentially, think of it as resumes. So we use that data to show things like, has someone that studied in the Greensboro region or the region that we're working for gone on to remain in Greensboro, or have they moved to a different region to work? So that's just one example that you can see within the dashboard. So this next slide talks a little bit about kind of what Cecelia has mentioned that might influence your marketing efforts. So using our data to understand what occupations you might have an undersupply of in your region will presumably leading you to think about, okay, where are we going to recruit talent from? We've got an undersupply of, I saw a gentleman that is joining us from Atlanta that works in tech. So let's say software engineers might be an example. The dashboard can be really helpful in helping you address where we recruit some of that talent from. So in the case of Action Greensboro, as Cecelia has mentioned, it was the aerospace industry and related occupations. a lot of job opportunities in that area, a lot of businesses that are growing around that, but maybe not the talent or available workforce to fill all of those job openings across multiple occupations, which means we need to go outside of the market. So using the talent dashboard can show you which areas you might want to recruit from certain occupations or industries. And that's really going to impact your marketing efforts. And I just give Cecelia and Action Greensboro so many props in terms of taking a dive into this and being more strategic and realizing that to take a more strategic approach, we need data to support that. We need to uncover other markets. We've got a great story to tell, but where do we tell that story to? And then on the flip side, the dashboard can show you which markets are you losing talent to. And does that loss involve alumni from your local colleges and universities? Which leads me to my next slide here, which I know in talking with many of the people that are attending the webinar here today is a big point of emphasis. So again, bear with me. We're looking at bubbles, quadrants. You're probably saying, Gareth, I need glasses here. I can't see this. What are you even talking about? Again, I'd be happy to give you a more in-depth demo. But this screenshot from the dashboard looks specifically at two things: retention and attrition. Retention from, in this case, local universities. So we're not looking at the Greensboro area here. This is a different geography set that we're looking. This is not Cecelia's specific data. And it does, as I mentioned before, primarily use the Lightcast profile data. So many of us want to know, are we keeping those individuals that graduated with a bachelor's or a master's from a college or university in our region within the local workforce? So the dashboard provides insights on not just from an institution level, what we're looking at here. So I think this is in the Ohio region where we've got 4 quadrants. I'm going to explain about those quadrants in a little bit more detail in a couple of minutes here. But we can also do things from a program level. For example, do we lose more individuals that graduated with a journalism degree compared to those that graduated with a degree in finance? Or even by year of graduation to see if those trends are changing over time. Are we losing younger alumni? Or are we losing more, shall we call it, mature alumni? So another data point that we look at and is represented on this chart addresses it by occupation to demonstrate how, in this case, an institution, but we can also do it by program, could be aligned or misaligned in terms of if you studied finance, but you ended up working in engineering. So in that case, we would say that your education does not align with your current work. So back to what we're looking at here on the chart, and I would love to show everyone in the room here in more detail on this, but time doesn't allow for it. Essentially, if you're looking at the bottom left quadrant here, we're calling that low alignment and low retention. So in this case, these 2 universities or colleges, they are losing talent from the local area. So people that went to those colleges and universities are choosing to go somewhere else. Not only that, what most folks are going to study are not what they end up actually working in that field of what they studied. So that's a bad situation. That's a misalignment and low retention. And then kind of the opposite is that top right corner with the blue, which what we're looking at there are the universities that are really contributing to the local economy. They have a pulse for aligning what people are studying. They're offering the right courses for what the business needs are. And there is enough business there to support them staying within the region. So that's just a little quick deep dive into the topic of retention and one of the things that we can address within the talent dashboard. And I think, oh, too many clicks. I'm too nervous. Cecelia, I think you're on mute.
after
I'm not the only one that
figure
has
that
the
out, right? I just wanted to reiterate, I think this data is so interesting, and it's something we as a team at Action Greensboro continue to use. And when we share it with an employer partner to say, okay, how can we support you? They're always like, this is such an amazing investment. So kudos to you guys for figuring out how to pull all this data into one portal. So here are the results of the Boomerang campaign. As you remember, we launched this in we put it together in 2020. We launched it in 2021. We've relocated 90 families back to Greensboro through what we call our high touch strategy. We've had over 23,000 social media engagements. And so, as you can imagine, this is a high social media campaign to reach not only people here to increase the number of prospects, but then also to attract people and remind people about how great Greensboro is. 200 plus concierge service inquiries. And so we're always on the phone or on Zoom with someone talking about how do we make those connections faster. I think we've had 3 or so this week. And so we get to meet a lot of really interesting people. 45 media mentions, everything from our local newspaper to books. If you've read If You Could Live Anywhere by Melanie Warnick, were mentioned in that book about why people choose where they live. So a lot of good press for this campaign, which makes us feel good. And then, of course, a successful Hulu campaign in Indianapolis as we continue to sort of test and see what works around using high-tech strategies. So we were also really excited to be recognized at the City Nation Place Global Conference just last month. We had the opportunity to go to London and meet a lot of really interesting place branding, destination marketing, economic development leaders really from all over the world. Sometimes you feel like, oh, little old Greensboro's here. But one of the great things that came out of that conference, aside from learning a lot, is that we were recognized as a really successful strategy through their awards. And so we were honored to be the winner of the Best Communication Strategy for Economic Development. We were in a category against Estonia, Copenhagen, Michigan, and the Republic of Moldova. And then we were also a finalist in the category of Best Use of Data, which is really a validation of the work that we've been doing with Lightcast around using the data to make really evidence-based decisions and risks as we continue to advertise outside of Greensboro. And so we were in that category with a number of local, U.S. and international leaders. So what's next for us? We are just continuing to innovate. And so that's really how we operate here at Action Greensboro. We like to stay on our toes. We like to be creative. My team likes to roll their eyes at the statement, I have an idea. And so an example of that is you see our holiday promotion right now that we're running locally to say, if you have a friend or a family member that's coming home for Christmas or for the holidays this season, we will deliver a boomerang box with a bow on it to put underneath your tree. And so in 2 days, we had 10 new prospects, which is a really good return for us for just a short photo shoot and a really cute dog. And then we're also continuing to think about how do we leverage this opportunity to think about other markets outside Greensboro that we can touch and support growth of our growing industries here. And so we're in conversation right now with one of our healthcare partners to see if we can do a partnership really focused on attracting nurses back to Greensboro through the Boomerang campaign. So early stage conversations on that, really replicating what has worked for our aviation community. Oh, so John, I'm handing it back to you to ask the big question.
Thank you. Well, it was the first thing that popped in my mind when we met. So I wanted to get a sense of our audience's mindset at the moment and ask who's ready to move to Greensboro with the rest of us.
Don't make me feel bad, peeps.
No, let's see. Yeah, this also could be called, how did Cecelia do today?
And John, just while we're waiting on the results of the poll, I'm noticing some of the comments on the audience. I know you're going to address some questions, but maybe my accent got in the way, the Southern accent that I have.
Yes, exactly.
What was the third data set? So I mentioned IRS, ACS, and the third one was Lightcast proprietary profile data. So just as a reminder, you'll get a copy of the presentation, but Lightcast has access to 700 million profiles, and that is essentially anywhere where someone is posting about their career and their work experience.
All right. Thanks for that, Gareth. And Cecelia, here's our results. We got 50% of our audience ready to pack their bags. Others, another 35%, say it sounds pretty great. And 48% says looks nice, but I love where I live.
Well, I think the audience should love where they live if they are
That's
looking
right.
to attract talent to their regions. So, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for playing. All right, we've got one more. Anyone interested in hearing more from Lightcast? If you want to give us a yay or a nay, we will follow up, have Gareth call you with one of his many accents and talk you through this in greater detail, or talk about how talent migration dashboards can help you attract boomerangs or others to your growing community. Alrighty, so let's move into Q&A. We've got quite a few that have come in prior to our webinar today through the registration process, but we have some live Q&A that I think we'll tackle first. I do want to just address a question here about whether this session recording will be shared out, and the answer is yes. We will send both the slides and the recording to you in an email as soon as tomorrow. So look for that to come, and be sure to share that with friends and family and anybody interested in moving to Greensboro. So on that note, I'll move on to ask some other questions of our speakers. Keith is asking, how did you identify these boomerangs originally?
Yes. So we talked to local people in the community, asking them, who do you know that you wish would move back to Greensboro? In many cases, this is a peer, a friend from high school, or a friend from growing up or going to college or universities. In some cases, it's someone's kid. And so that was the original, what we would call like a high touch strategy to recruit our boomerang prospects.
Very good.
We also run a lot of local advertisements. And so those ads say, we want to help relocate your friends and family back, and you can enter their names on our website.
Good point, actually, and it's a good segue into our next question, because Aaron is asking, how did you get metrics from the Hulu ad?
We get metrics through the views. Yeah. So there's an internal portal. If you're a nonprofit organization, this is not an advertisement for Hulu, but if you're a nonprofit, they do a really nice rate for nonprofits. And so then you can have a back end in the sense of how many people are viewing it. We also created a custom landing page on our website that led people to an aviation webpage. And so they could inquire on that site specific to aviation. So unless you were watching it, you probably didn't have that URL.
Okay. So Ted is asking, and this came up in the registration questionnaire too, about funding. Where did your funding come from most of your marketing outreach? How did you align resources to do this work? And what types of groups came together to help support this work?
Great question. So initially, when we pulled the groups together to really conceive of this idea, it included everyone from our higher education institutions, from city government and county government, business leaders in the community, as well as the philanthropic sector. And so that was the group that really conceived of the campaign. And then because we're a partner with the Greensboro Chamber, we do a lot of work with existing industry. And so we have a pretty nice Rolodex of community leaders in the city. And so that's how we sort of built a database around who would be supportive of this campaign. And so, when you start spamming people saying, I have 5 new people that want to move back to Greensboro, sometimes you wonder if they're going to block you. But it's been really amazing. People are so enthusiastic about this campaign because it's such flattery, right? Like to see the caliber of talent that's moving back and really filling the needs of their community, of their work. And so, a good story is we had, and this is kind of the nature of this is really personal. And so oftentimes one of the challenges that we have is that someone could be working for an industry or a sector that may not exist here in Greensboro, but what we have to think about is what are those transferable skills that somebody could fit into the Greensboro workforce. And so a nice story is there was a young guy who had gone to school, moved to Japan, was teaching English in Japan, came back to North Carolina and was deciding if he wanted to live in Greensboro, Wilmington, or Raleigh. We met with him. A friend of the family said, Ike is a really great opportunity to recruit as a boomerang. We met with him, and he wanted to move from education to really project management and being in a business sector. And we said, well, you're fluent in Japanese, right? And he said, yes. He said, well, I'm only fluent in conversational Japanese, not business Japanese. At the same time, Honda Jet, which is a Japanese company, was looking for somebody to sort of help support what they would call their J team, their Japanese-facing executives. And so it actually became sort of this perfect fit of the company looking for someone with a really specific skill set and somebody who was interested in moving back to Greensboro. And it's really about those high-touch conversations that we're having to make those connections. And so that's a good example of how we're really helping people, I would say, handhold in those situations to make the right fit. But that becomes contagious, and I think it also tells a story about what kind of community we are when we can invest that much time.
One more question for you. Guillaume from Quebec is asking, what indicators did you use to measure your success? And has a part two to this question. And prior to this approach, had you attempted other approaches that were not quite as successful? And what did you learn from those?
Good questions. And I forgot to answer one question from the last one, funding. So the initial funding for the campaign came from local philanthropic organizations that pooled dollars to allow us to design and create the campaign. We have had business leaders that have invested into the campaign since, and we're currently in a matching grant where we're trying to raise. We've gotten a nice grant from a foundation that we're matching it to business. So really trying to increase the number of business investments that we have in it. And it's nice when you have a win and you can say, we found you a really great candidate that you hired, and so now it's time to invest in our work. So going back to the question that you just asked me, John, that now I don't remember. Can you repeat it?
I can ask it again. Sure. Indicators that you leaned on to measure your success and prior experiences with other approaches that weren't quite as successful. And what did you learn from those?
Yeah. So the first is the indicators. We measured the number of people that gave us a prospect, right? Because we had to build that database before we could launch the campaign. And we didn't want to launch it with 10 people sending a box and hoping for the best. And so we gave ourselves sort of a goal of over 100 prospects that we would have before we start mailing these boxes out. Again, the real win is when someone writes you and says, I'm ready to move back, or I'm ready to have a conversation. A really, really good win is when somebody does move back because you've helped them find the right school or the right cello instructor or the right job. But in the middle, we know that branding matters, especially to us in Greensboro. And so when we have Instagram followers or social media followers, we make impressions on newspapers, when we make media. So we try to do our best to sort of count that. And so we can look at multiple indicators of success. When I was at the Young Smart Local Conference last week or a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia, I was talking to some peers about sort of this, I made up the term, the cemetery of livability, not the company, but come move and live in Greensboro website. I think we all have probably had that opportunity where let's build a beautiful website that talks about how great we are as a community. And those oftentimes work, but if you don't have the stakeholders that are wrapped around them, that it doesn't necessarily make that sticky, right? And so unless people are utilizing it from a localized perspective that they can share with a friend who might want to move here or a prospect that's looking to relocate for a job, oftentimes they fall flat. And so I think we've been involved in a number of sort of city branding opportunities that unless the community really believes in them and is a stakeholder in sharing them, they move to the cemetery of talent attraction sites.
I don't know. This is some grim.
Sorry, I got morbid.
Yeah, it's all good. Another great question, I think, and it's a great add-on. Tom is asking about whether housing, daycare, and transportation options were available for those moving back.
So, good question. We do, I will say, in our cost of living comparisons, we have 6 different regions across the country that we give a card to depending on where you live. And so, if you live in Miami, you get a specialized card that says this is how much you're going to save on housing, groceries, transportation, childcare, something else. So we do see those as, real benefit of moving to Greensboro of our cost of living. We do make connections. It's very rare for a boomerang to ask for a realtor because in most cases they know somebody here already or they know what neighborhood they want to live in because they've lived here before. But we do try to point people if they need it. Childcare is another one. And so we do have lists of daycares, elementary schools, K-12 schools that we can hand people if they need it. And as I mentioned, we've done everything from, find somebody, a cello instructor, to point someone to where they can get a used refrigerator. So hopefully I answered that question.
One more. John from Lightcast is asking about the 90 families that moved to Greensboro that you recruited back. Curious if you're checking in on them and how they're doing.
Yeah, so we do have a current boomerang list, and those include people that were boomerangs before boomerang was a thing, and then new boomerangs. And we try to plug them in primarily to our Synergy Young Professional program for professional development, leadership engagement. We try to email them just periodically. They don't want that many emails. Nobody does, but about things that are happening in the community. And then since the campaign started to become successful, we started a monthly, what we call a co-working club. And so we have a partnership with a local co-working space where we invite boomerangs who are remote workers to come and spend the day together. And that's a really good way for them to connect. And we found that it's a really awesome way to make friends because, like we said, not everyone wants to move back and be friends with people they went to high school with, but they want to find peers. And so it's fun to be in a space where 2 people who moved here from Boston can connect, or people who have children can connect. And so that's been a really nice space and a social opportunity for remote workers who have decided to move back.
Awesome. Well, folks, we're at time. And Cecelia, I just want to say I'm glad we made friends with you and that you've made friends of Lightcast and the many friends we had joining us here today who are inspired, I'm sure, and excited to learn about the out-of-the-box approach here that you implemented. Again, folks, we'll be sharing the recording. We'll be sharing slides and some contact information. If there's anything Lightcast can do for you all in the way that you're exploring doing similar strategies for attracting and boomerang talent, let us know. But otherwise, we'll be signing off and wishing you the best for lovely holidays. Thanks all. Cecelia, great job. Thank you, Gareth.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.